Welcome to The Undercurrent, your source for grassroots news. I'm Lauren Windsor. Joining me today is Tangerine Bolen to talk about Edward Snowden and his revelations on the NSA surveillance programs. Tangerine is a co-plaintiff and lead organizer for the Hedges v. Obama case over the NDAA indefinite detention clause. She's also the executive director of Revolution Truth, an organization dedicated to defending and restoring legitimate democracies. Tangerine, let's first talk about the NDAA.
Sure.
This yearly defense appropriations bill included the indefinite detention clause first in 2012. It allows for the indefinite detention of American citizens on American soil without warrant or charge. Proponents say that the provision only applies to terrorists. So can you tell me the definition of a terrorist?
Well, there isn't really a settled definition, obviously, in the law. The definition is ever expanding and rapidly so. I mean, we just saw a Washington Post editorial that basically is justifying the government's going after expanding the authorization for use of military force so that they can identify new, quote, terror groups around the world and indefinitely detain them and other fun things. So it's expanding, and who knows?
So it's vague language. Terrorists could apply to someone who is actually an al-Qaeda member or someone that is just aiding al-Qaeda in some way. And I guess as a journalist, why that becomes so relevant is like if you started to say that journalists were aiding the enemy in that way, then is a journalist a terrorist?
Well, so just some clarification. So aiding the enemy is, and material support in particular, are far different than what we've sued over, which is, quote, substantial support and being an associated force. Those two latter terms are undefined, and that's where the sweeping, unchecked, vagueness comes into play here. There is no definition of substantial support or what it means to be an associated force. So yes, even journalists and activists, of course, could be indefinitely detained under the NDAA, and even the government has claimed that that's the case.
Do you think that there is ever a justified use for indefinite detention?
Oh gosh. I would have to say in light of Guantanamo, certainly not in the way that we've historically conducted it and are presently conducting it. It's a nightmare. It's absolutely atrocious. I think that there may be cases for a bounded length of time for indefinite detention, and I know that sounds like a contradiction in terms, but something that's much shorter, something where you're ensured both habeas review and your day in court, not years down the road, but a lot sooner than that. Again, I think that's territory that other experts would have a lot better things to say about than I do. I think it's a complicated picture.
But like the FISA court, do you think there should be an indefinite detention court so that these people that are considered to be that high a level of a threat, there is continuous review of their case?
I think I would not promote secret courts. I mean, in the FISA case, we have a secret court based on secret legal justifications, making secret decisions, and then national security letters that are delivered in secret and are cloaked in secrecy. So there is zero accountability across that entire spectrum. They say the officials are saying that there's plenty of accountability and so on and so forth, but we have no way of ascertaining whether that's the case. And that is absolutely counter to a democracy. So I guess I would apply the same logic, obviously, to indefinite detention. Everyone needs their day in court, and it cannot just be a secret court. That, again, flaunts a democracy. So,
well, it's unconstitutional.
No. Yeah.
I mean, it's patently unconstitutional. And I don't know, we keep hearing the arguments, like slippery slope arguments. Where do we draw the line with terrorism?
That's $1 million question. I mean, it's interesting because I think Obama and these people in our security agencies think that they're doing the right thing. But when you have a government that lies to start an absolutely devastating and atrocious war, I mean, a war that has caused a massive loss of goodwill around the world for us. And there are so many outward effects from that war, and that will last for generations. And when you have that legacy, what has followed is this absolute fundamental erosion of civil liberties and human rights around the world. So, these guys think that they're doing the right thing, but they're basing it on a really toxic and compromised foundation.
We've already heard the terms treason and traitor being applied to Edward Snowden. Is it long before we hear the third T, terrorist?
Well, I think actually some pundits have already uttered that word, and certainly traitor has been bandied about quite a bit. So I don't know. I'm curious, to see whether anyone in the House Armed Services Committee or anyone else in military starts to use that word. So who knows? But traitor is bad enough as it is. So.
Well, do you think that his actions constitute terrorism under the NDAA?
Absolutely not. He's a whistleblower.
So by your standards, then, he is a hero rather than a traitor?
Yeah, I think he's someone to be commended, definitely. He is someone who's, just like Bradley Manning, saw widespread wrongdoing. He saw something that appears to contravene the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. And obviously so. The legal justification for this is murky at best and really hogwash, probably. And he saw all of this and he decided to bring it to light, and in a very careful and strategic manner, which was great.
I would agree with you on the first part of his actions, being his disclosure to Greenwald of the NSA surveillance programs. But I think that he entered murky territory with his disclosures to the Chinese paper on Wednesday that America was hacking.
So I wrote a piece about that. I just posted it on Facebook recently that got a lot of play. People were pretty angry that I wrote it. And if the news is correct on that reporting, if Snowden is meeting with Chinese officials and is divulging intimate details about any kind of hacking activities from the US into China, that veers into territory that is not good. It discredits the whistleblower defense argument, and it muddies the water here. However, there are already contradicting reports on this. We don't know if that's the case. It may just be that what he told them was that the U.S. government is actually hacking into universities and other non-governmental entities in China and Hong Kong. Now, is that wonderful that he said that? That's territory that I think people who understand the law a lot better than I do should cover. But if he's reporting, again, illegal activity of the U.S. government spying, not on Chinese government or military, but on Chinese civilians, I think that that's something that we need to know just as well as everything else that he released.
The NSA surveillance program with unwarranted search and seizure, violating due process, it has a chilling effect on free speech in the same way that the NDAA does, these NSA surveillance programs.
It certainly does. And actually, I can tie this right back to Edward Snowden and in particular to Thomas Drake. All of these things are connected. It's part of a wider milieu of laws and policies and actions that have happened in the last decade that had a sort of a terrifying impact. Thomas Drake is the most pure whistleblower you will ever come across. That man tried to do everything right. He tried to go up the chain of command, did all the proper whistleblowing procedures. All these pundits in the media right now are criticizing Edward Snowden for having failed to do that. However, Edward Snowden probably knows, as many other people know in government and in contractors with government, it doesn't work. Bradley Manning tried it. Thomas Drake tried it. Thomas Drake was heavily retaliated against. He was demoted. He was put in some horrible job way below his security clearance and expertise. He was treated badly. He was threatened repeatedly by multiple people. He finally blew. And so, it has a terrifying, chilling effect on people's speech, because people who are prone to do the right thing, to go through all the right channels, they know that doesn't work. And now they see this. Anyone can be monitored at any time. I mean, there's some gray area, I think some conflicting reports on exactly what the NSA is doing. But essentially, with this kind of power, it's an unchecked, unaccountable power, and yes, it chills people's speech, undoubtedly.
What is your take on the coverage by the mainstream media?
Oh, well, I think some of the coverage has been good. cheers to Edward Snowden and Glenn Greenwald because they're already affecting some changes. They've certainly gotten some transparency back. But today I watched the C-SPAN video of the House Intelligence Services Committee. They came out and were interviewed by the media after they met with a bunch of people from Congress, FBI, et cetera. The first question and the question later on were both so squarely entrenched in the mindset of the dominant paradigm of the government. I think the first question was, it was something like, are you worried, there are going to be more people who break the law just like Edward Snowden did? And it just reminded me right away of this issue we're facing where people are compromised based on access. To get that close to power, you have to parrot the dominant paradigm. You have to parrot, their rhetoric, and you have to think within their confines, their parameters. If you ask questions like that indicate that you're in any way supportive or curious about the positive effects of Edward Snowden, you will not get access to these people. And so, yeah, our media, I agree with Glenn Greenwald, our media is absolutely complicit in this erosion of liberties.
Why do you think it is that the Obama administration has waged this war on whistleblowers? And when I say waging the war on whistleblowers, this is something that's terminology that's been used really by independent progressive media. The Guardian's Glenn Greenwald, Mother Jones, you and your co-plaintiffs. It's on Democracy Now! But, not so much on...
Even the New York Times, actually. Sorry, Lauren.
Oh, no, please.
Even the New York Times. Yeah, even the New York Times has used that terminology. They're aligned with us on the whistleblower front, so to their credit. But what do I think about his waging war?
Why do you think that, given that he ran on transparency and accountability, that I'm a constitutional lawyer, why do you think that he has gone to great lengths to shred the Constitution?
Well, I have a kind of complicated two-part answer to that, and it is a sign of how much I think about these things. And in particular, I think about Obama and what he's done and why. So firstly, I think that it's obvious Obama inherited an absolutely atrocious legacy from Bush and company. That legacy included a lot of illegality on so many fronts, but in particular in the military and across our agencies where they were stretching the bounds of the law, if not outright breaking the law. And that didn't happen once, and it's not; those aren't isolated events. It's a chain of events that impacts other events over time, and it changes the entire scenery. So I think Obama inherited a terrible thing, and I think that he had to make some really tough choices at the outset of his presidency when he found that he was facing sort of a country that is still pretty racist, is easily emotionally driven, and has been hard on him in ways that weren't fair. I think in a way he had to make some hard choices, one on the security front, because as a black man he absolutely could not afford to have a terrorist attack on US soil. There's just no way. I think he's a black man in a country who's had to work very, very hard to get where he's gotten, and he knows what he faces. He knows the bigotry, the hatred, the racism that he's faced. And so I think Obama kind of aligns himself with power in a way that is really uncomfortable and lacks some integrity because
he's the king of compromise. He wants to be seen as like the reasonable president. I am bipartisan Barack, the king of compromise. I think that will be his legacy, is that he was so afraid of taking a staunch position that he just infuriated everybody on both sides.
But so I would concur with that on many things. However, on the national security front, he's been anything but compromising. In fact, he's had the complicity of Congress and the complicity of all these agencies, so he hasn't had to be compromising. He's been far right of center when it comes to military issues and national security issues. So on that front, when it comes to his power in that arena, contrary to everything he said in 2008 when he was stumping, he has taken that power and extended it and pushed it as far as he could possibly go. And I think that it's not just that he couldn't afford a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. I think it's more personal to him. I think Bradley Manning, in a way, and WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, in a way, were personal to him. They were personal insults. How dare these people besmirch his reputation? How dare these people add another headache to his plate when he had so many headaches to deal with already?
Thank you for coming on the show today. You're doing very important work. Best of luck with your lawsuit. I'm Lauren Windsor. Thanks for watching. Get pulled in to the undercurrent.
Throw down your guns, you killer. Oh, what's it like to pull your trigger and never be your mother's son.